Hello my friends, and a very warm welcome back to my painting channel. And in this video we're going to be taking another journey into the Middle-earth strategy battle game. And in this video I'm going to be painting Sharku, who is the Warg rider captain. So I'm going to paint Sharku on the Warg and not on foot, but I'm going to do this in a couple of different bits. So we're going to do with part one. We're going to start with part one by painting the base colors. So we're going to paint this in three different areas. We're going to paint the base colors, then just the Warg, and then Sharku on his own as well. So painting just the base colors, I'm going to start with one of my favorite colors, which is Dark Rust 302. This is a Vallejo, really dark brown color, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint this over all of the miniatures. So I'm going to cover the entire miniature using this color. As you can see, I've already primed the whole miniature in grey. Grey is my favorite color to prime miniatures. You can use whichever color you feel more comfortable with. Normally people use a lot of black, but for me personally, I like grey because it gives me a bit of a mixture of a dark color that will allow the paint to absorb to, but also a little bit of a lightness that allows some of the vibrance to really sort of pop and stand out on the models as well. So once the dark rust is done, I'm then going to use a layer of ash grey. So this is a nice dark grey colour, and this is going to go all across the Warg's head and across the legs as well. So we're going to paint this just down the front of the legs, down to the paws and things like that. So I'm testing out a few different new things with this one. So I'm testing a new camera, testing a new painting station, and I'm testing a few new sort of lighting setups and things like that. So you have to let me know in the comments if this works for you, if you think this is good, and if you enjoy the sort of new setup, or if you prefer the old camera or anything like that, or if there's any real sort of difference. But let me know in the comment section below. I would really be happy to hear from you. So yeah, once that's done, then I'm just going to use a nice sort of Tindalos red. So I'm going to use a dark red for this one, and this is just to go inside of the Warg's mouth and around the tongue. You can use any red that you like for this one, as long as it's sort of a darker red. So you want something, if you're a Citadel user, a little bit darker than a Citadel sort of Mephiston red. You want something a little bit darker than that. If you're using Vallejo, you could just go with a nice heavy red color, and that would be great too. Now from there I'm going to use another one of my channel favorites, and I'm going to use Tenebrous Grey. Tenebrous Grey, you could use black instead if you don't have this color, and as I say quite a lot, I use Tenebrous Grey quite a bit because it takes to the miniature in a really nice even fashion. All we're going to do with this is we're just going to paint over the metal area of the blade that Sharku's carrying, and I'm also going to paint this across his little vest here, and just a little bit across the cape as well, because he has a cloak that's just flowing across the back of the model as well. It's flowing as he's riding his Warg into battle. So you can see just here, just going to paint this sort of black or this really dark grey as I'm painting as we're going along. I'm going to try to isolate certain areas of the model that we want to paint in different sort of tones or different colours. From there then I'm also going to use a small amount of bone white. Again, another channel favourite. This is a great creamy white colour, and that's all I'm going to do is just put this across the teeth just like so. You don't have to be too careful with this bit. We are going to use a little bit of a wash and things like that, sort of to tie these colours together, so don't be too worried. I'm also going to paint this just in his mouth, but again I'm not too worried about that, and across these sort of feathery sharp points that are sticking down off his legs as well. We're going to paint these sort of this creamy white colour, just because it'll break things up a little bit and give us a little bit more to look at when we're looking at the model. We don't want it all to be just like a flat brown or a too dark a brown. We kind of want these little bits to stand out so that it detracts your eyes and it gives you things to sort of catch your attention on the model as well. Now, once I've done all of that, I'm then going to use a wash. So for this one, I'm just going to use a Vallejo wash. If you watch my channel, you'll know that I use a lot of different washes to get a lot of different results. And I've been asked a lot of different things in the past about which ones work best and all these different things. A lot of the time, it is personal choice. Now, I'm going to use this Vallejo black wash because it does tone everything back down on the model. So what I want to do is use this black to bring the colors down and bring that tone down so that it darkens everything down and then gives me a really good base platform to build the vibrancy back up. So this is a really great color. I mean, you could use Null Oil if you want instead, if you're a Citadel user. That will do pretty much the same thing. This Vallejo color does darken a lot more than Null Oil though. So moving on to part 2, we are going to then make sure that we paint the warg. So this is going to be painting the warg and getting this really cool sort of colour out of this warg. So we're going to start using this Vallejo flat earth. And using a very small dry brush, I'm just going to use controlled brush strokes on this dry brush. So we're just going to dry brush this across the fur. And as you can see, this is already starting to build up that colour tone and starting to bring a little bit more colour through. You'll have to excuse some of the little bits of sort of focus issues that I'm getting. As I said, I'm trying a lot of new different things out, so this is something that I'm learning myself. But that's all we're doing. Again, like I say, just trying to be careful. Using this small controlled dry brush, this gives us control over where we're going to dry brush. So we're going to dry brush across the fur areas, but we're not going to dry brush across the legs and the paws and things like that, and certainly not across the face either, because those bits we're going to paint different colours. So what we're going to do is get this really cool two-tone colour texture out of the model just by dry brushing the areas that we want. Now, once we've done the flat earth, we're going to use the beige brown then as well. And beige brown now is a lighter tone to that flat earth. And this time we're going to be a little bit more controlled as to where we want to place this. So we're going to place this more on the higher up areas, so on the areas of the model that are closer towards the top. So we're going to do this across the warg's mane and across the back, so just across the top area of the back of the warg and across the tail and things like that. And this is giving us a little bit of a control, or an illusion of control of where the light is going to be. As you can see, I'm just trying to be very careful as to where I place this. I'm trying to be careful to pick out some of those areas that I really want to be highlighted and a little bit brighter. So the flat earth tone, we've sort of dry brushed that across all of the fur areas, but then this beige brown, we're just going to paint this across the areas that we want lighter, the areas and the tones that we want to really sort of stick out. Also painting a little bit just across the top of Sharku himself, so just across his little mane as well. And again, that's going to tie the model together. That's going to tie the rider and the sort of mount and the steed together into a really nice sort of texture and tone. It's going to give those colours a little bit of a semblance of unity, where we can see that those colours are bringing the model together. And again, as you can see, I'm just controlling where I want this to be. So just across the back area there, and just across the areas where we think the light is going to catch on the model, giving us that little bit of a light boost and a little bit of an illusion, as I say, of where the light is going to be. Then once that's done, I'm going to use a Vallejo green ochre. So this is a little bit like a khaki colour, but it has a little bit more warmth to it, a little bit of a slight sort of colour boost, a little bit of that greeny sort of colour and tone as well. And that warmth and that vibrance, then we're going to use this very small dry brush again. And again, we're just going to be very controlled about where we want to place this. So this is going to be mostly across the tips of the mane, and mostly just sort of across the very top edge of the back, just around the tail and those legs and things like that. And again, this is all about just controlling that light source and controlling where we want the light to be and how bright we want it to be in certain areas. And we're not too worried about making little mistakes across the face and things, because we're going to paint all of that in a bit, but we don't want to cover the face or the legs or the paws and things in this, because they are going to be grey instead. So once you're finished with the dry brushing, we're going to go back to the ash grey, which was the base colour that we used to paint the face of the warg. And this time we're just going to use our size 0 detail brush. And we're just going to pick out all of those details again. And as you can see, I'm just going to use the tip of the brush, just use a little bit of character and a little bit of control to pick out areas where I want the grey to be, while leaving that black area, that wash, in those recess points around the face and things like that. This is giving us control now to build that character through our brush strokes, and allow us to use brush strokes to create a simulation of fur and a little bit more, like I say, character and texture and things through using the very tip of the brush. As you can see, I'm just going to paint this down the legs as well as across the head. And we're just going to tie this all together. And it doesn't matter if you're using a mixture of different sort of brush strokes and stippling effects and all of these different things, they create a really great effect. Then we're going to mix ash grey and graphite together. And as I always do on this channel, I'm just going to use one blob of each. So this is a 50-50 split. That means we're just going to use 50% of each paint, and this is going to give us a really nice natural sort of level up, or a really nice natural boost to the vibrance and sort of highlight. This means that the base color and the highlight tone are going to be quite even and quite equal, but they're also going to be quite natural to each other as well, creating a really nice looking effect on the model. This will allow your eyes to sort of look at the model and think, ooh, this is really nice, this ties together quite nicely. And again, using the very tip of the brush, we're just going to pick out those details. As you can see, those brush strokes are creating some real character around the face. We're creating some of those folds and some of the textures around the snarling face, and we're picking out sort of the character and the emotion behind the sort of character as well, just like so. And now that face is really starting to pop off the miniature. You can really see it already making a massive impact. So that's the great idea about using the sort of half-stop highlights. And as you can see, I'm just using a lot of really small, sharp sort of brush strokes just on the legs, and that's just to simulate a little bit of a sort of furry texture, or to simulate hair even if there isn't hair on the model. And it's just similar to what we've done when we've used our Let's Paint Horses video. So in the video that I painted horses, and if you can remember, I used a lot of very small sort of brush strokes to simulate and create this illusion of hair and fur on the horse. We're doing the exact same thing here, just using different colors. So once that's dry, then we're going to use the graphite on its own, because that then is going to become the most natural and sort of progressive way to build up these highlights. And again, using the very, very edge of that brush, that size 0 brush, and using very, very small brush strokes and sharp brush sort of stippling kind of effect. You can see where I'm starting to really pick out some of those details, but it is creating a lot of texture or a lot of character through those brush strokes. And by doing this, we're getting a lot of character and a lot of detail out of the model. And we're creating a lot more depth to the model than just these simple lines that we blend in together. Instead, this is creating a lot of depth and emotion and character through the model as well, as you can see. You can really see that color and that highlight really starting to boost that face, and the face really pops off the miniature. It becomes a real big focal point, especially because you have these two different contrasting colors. So you've got these really sort of cool blue grays almost next to these sort of really nice warm sort of toned brown colors, these earth tones of the fur, and this creates a really nice contrast to the model. It's a fantastic way of painting these wargs, and it gives you a really, really great sort of character out of them as well. So as you can see, I'm just painting all of these little tiny little brush strokes just on the legs again building that character and texture through. And so there we go, we're just painting those little illusions of fur and depth and texture and character just by using the tip of the brush. I love painting like this, especially on things like horses and the warg and things like that, because it really does create that character in such a simple way. It gives you a lot more depth to the character and a lot more to look at on the model as well, just by giving these little stippling effects, these little sort of rough, small sort of brush strokes. Just creates that depth, that illusion, as I say. It just gives you a lot more to look at on your model. And once that's done, then we're going to move on to use Leather Brown from the AK Interactive. So if you've seen me paint leathers on the channel before, you will know how I do this. And this is just by covering all of those leather straps that we've got now, just on the warg here, using this leather brown color. So this is going to be our base color, and then from here we're going to build this up, and this is going to create a really nice sort of a leather, sort of scratched out leather texture, and give us a really cool, really great looking style to it as well. So this is a little bit of a in-between sort of color, this leather brown. This has a little bit sort of a little bit of a reddy sort of color to it, but it is a little bit darker, or it does dry down a little bit darker than it appears. So it looks a little bit bright to begin with, and then as you build, as it dries down, it does sort of dry down a little bit darker. So don't be too put off thinking that this is a little bit too bright or a little bit too light, because this will tone into a really, really nice sort of leather effect on the model. As I said, if you've watched me paint leathers before, you'll know sort of the technique and the style and the colours that I use. And if you've got a tried and tested way of painting leathers, you can paint them in your own style as you like. But this is just me giving you guys a bit of an idea, just a little bit more sort of an option and a different way of painting those leathers as well. So once that's dry, we're going to use the leather brown and a deep brown together. Again, we're going to use a half and half, so just one blob of each, 50% of each. And as you can see now, I'm just going to use the very edge of that size 0 brush, and with this we're going to try to catch some of the very edges of these leather straps, and we're going to use that stippling effect and those little brush strokes again. And we're going to use those little brush strokes again because this is how we're going to kind of create that rough sort of scratched and worn out texture on the leathers as well. There we go, just like so, just across the bottom here, and just underneath you can see where I'm not covering all of that brown. Instead, I'm just picking and choosing some of the areas and some of the edges where we want this lighter tone to be, just like so. There we go, and you can see all those scratches appearing, and you can see sort of the underlying tone and the undercolor coming through as well, and that's creating that depth as well, and creating that illusion, as I said earlier, of depth and contrast and things, just by using such simple techniques. And there we go, you can really see me now kind of just cutting that that sort of color and texture through by using the edge of the brush and just creating those little scratches, those little bits, those little techniques. It's such a simple way of painting, but it has such a really great reward as well because it looks amazing on the model. Now once that's done, then we're going to use the deep brown, and we're just going to use this as our extreme highlight. So again, we're going to use the very edge, and this time we're just going to run where we think some of the light effects and some of the lighter areas are going to be. So just across the very top of these leather straps, just like so, and just add in some scratches and some added little textures and things like that here and there, just trying to build as much of that sort of color contrast and color tone as we possibly can. There we go, just like so, and you can really see the sort of vibrance boosting. And again, like I say, this does dry down a little bit darker than it looks, so don't be too worried about it looking very vibrant at the moment. This will sort of tone down and will create a really nice texture as well. Just like so, same technique, same effect, just using the very tip of the brush, as you can see, and just running this across those leathers in sort of scratchy kind of effects, and in kind of these scratchy techniques, just like so. And this is giving us a good bit of control and giving us the ability to really sort of build up that texture on those leather areas. It's a very quick and easy technique, as I said earlier, and it really does stand out and create a fantastic look to your model. It's also really great because we're using this really sort of bright, vibrant orange leathers, these sort of really nice light leathers. This allows those leather straps to really stand off the browns that we used on the Warg's fur as well. Again, giving you more to look at on the model. So we're not just having a plain black leather strap on the Warg. This is giving us a lot more to look at. It's breaking the model up a lot more and giving us a lot more interesting points of the model that we can keep our eye on. Now once that's done, then I'm just going to use a little bit of carmine red from Vallejo. For this, we're just going to paint the tongue, and this is going to build that little bit of vibrance inside the mouth. It doesn't matter too much, we don't need to go too extreme inside of the mouth. We're only going to paint the tongue. The rest I'm going to leave dark sort of red inside, and that's going to create that illusion that there's a shade and a shadow and a darker area inside of its mouth than outside. Then once that's done, we're going to go back to the bone white again, and we're just going to pick out those teeth once more, this time with all of the black area just stuck in between with the wash. This is going to create that vibrance. This is going to allow those teeth to really stand out and really stick out. Now if you wanted to, you could always put a small amount of Seraphim Sepia just onto those teeth if you wanted to yellow them up a little. The sepia tone is really good for sort of yellowing up those teeth and making them look really gnarly and sort of worn and grim and nasty as well. So for this, I'm just going to paint those little bits of detail just across those teeth, just like so. And with that, the Warg is done. From there then, part 3, we're going to paint Sharku himself. So we're going to try to tie those colours together and keep things quite even across the model. So we're going to start with the ash grey, and what we're going to do with the ash grey then, we're just going to paint this with a very controlled dry brush just across the cloak on the back. So we're going to do the exact same thing as what we did with the Warg. So we're just going to use a very small controlled dry brush, as you can see. I'm just going to use this to very lightly dry brush that ash grey across the fur across the back. And the reason why I'm I'm using the grey colours again is I just want to tie the rider and the steed together. So using similar colours is going to create that unity and that parity across the model as well. It is difficult to just get into some of those areas, especially around the shoulders, so just try to take your time and be very careful. Once that's dry, I'm going to use the graphite colour as well. And again, I'm just going to dry brush this up slightly and just create this illusion of light just across the edges and just across the extreme edges, just like so. So just trying to be very, very careful about where I dry brush this and how I apply this onto the model as well. Just being careful, especially around those shoulder areas, as you can see. But it's all just about picking out those highlights. I'm just going to do a little bit across his little sort of chest piece, his little shirt that he's got here as well. And again, that's just about creating that vibrance and keeping the colours very, very similar and toned together in a very, very similar sort of manner. There we go, just trying to be careful not to get this on the skin and things like that. Now from there I'm going to use an anthracite grey, and this is a very nice sort of blue grey. Now I've watered the blue greys down quite a bit, and for this what I'm going to do is just using the tip of the brush like we did when we were painting the details on the Warg. I'm just going to pick out those areas on the cloak. So we're going to build this slight vibrant sort of blue sort of tone underneath. It's not going to be a vibrant blue, this is going to be a sort of toned in blue colour. And again, this is just about creating in a little bit more colour and texture to your model. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I don't want the entire model to just be brown and grey. I want there to be semblances and also areas where colour will show through. So I'm going to paint this just across the little sort of cloth area, as you can see, just around the front of his trousers and just around the inside of the cape and inside of the cloak as well. It does have this sort of blue-grey tone to it, which is great. That's kind of what we're looking for. Once that's done, then I'm going to use the ocean blue. So this is just a vibrant step up. Again, on the camera it looks really, really vibrant, but it's actually not as vibrant as it looks. I've watered this down so that it creates a little bit more of a glaze, so a very thin layer. And that's all I'm doing then, is just trying to pick out some of those folds in the cloth, as if the light is catching on some parts of the cloth, but not all, just creating that depth and creating that nice contrast between some of the lighter areas and some of the darker areas. And again, it's giving us something a little bit different to look at from all those earthy colours, from those sort of light leathers and those sort of tones. It's just giving us a little bit of a cool down colour as well, and just giving us a little bit more colour and tone to look at on the model, so that it's not all just brown and grey. And again, we're just going to paint that just inside, being very, very careful on the folds of the cloth, on the cape, just like so. And there we go, just like so. From there then, we're going to use a Dark Rust 302, and we're going to mix that with Beastie Brown. So again, I'm just going to use half and half, Beastie Brown and Dark Rust, and using the very tip of the brush, I'm now just going to paint down and across all of those sort of straps around his legs. So we're going to paint his trousers, but he doesn't actually have sort of trousers as such. We have these sort of leather straps that are going all of the way around. Now you could dry brush these if you'd prefer. I'm going to try to paint these using the very tip of the brush. As you can see, it is quite complicated, it is quite difficult, it does take a little bit of time, but it will be worth it, because these are areas of the model that will again stand out off the model as we go. It's also great because we're using a different brown again, and by using a different brown again, that just ties things, sort of separates all of those browns, but ties browns together as well. So we're going to then just use the Beastie Brown on its own, and then as you can see, I'm just going to build the vibrancy back up, so just going across those trousers area, and we're just going to paint this just across the back of the legs, and across all of those straps, and across all of the leather straps going down and around his legs as well. And as I said, it's nice to have a mixture of different browns, because then that breaks the model up, so you can really see that although the model and the rider are quite unified, there is a separation there as well. So the trousers are a different brown to the leathers of the saddle for that reason. So they look great and they pop in their own different ways, but they don't also tie too much together that you lose one part of the model into the other. It's about trying to keep them separate and trying to give yourself that nice little separate area where you can really sort of see the difference between Sharku and, of course, the Warg. Like I say, you could dry brush this if you wanted to, but using those small brush strokes like we did on the Warg, this gives you then that great ability to control where you're going to use a lot of the the textures, and sort of those brush strokes are going to add to those textures and add to those scratches, scrapes, and make that leathers look a little bit more worn. Once that's done, then that's all I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of water into strong tone, and I'm just going to tie some of those leather colors back together. So because the leathers are a little bit brighter than what I would want, because I want Sharku to be a little bit darker, I'm just going to add a small amount of this strong tone using water as well, just so that it darkens the inner parts of those leather straps. And that's just about tying those colors together. From there, I'm also then going to use a leather brown, but this leather brown is going to be from the Army Painter. And for this leather brown, I'm just going to paint this across all of those little strap areas across his back. Now, I don't actually know what these are. They look like, I don't know, giant worms or things like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to paint these using the leather brown. And again, it's just about tying, it's about separating all of those different browns so that we've got a lot to look at on the model, but we're tying all of those earthy colours together. It's very similar to when I painted Radagast. So we want all of those colours to tie together, but we want them to be separate so that it's not just one big flat brown model to look at. Now we're going to use a highlight then of Monster Brown just across the top of those again, and again just using the very tip of the brush, we just dab in this on just so that it creates the illusion of light and gives us that nice vibrant boost as well across the top of the model. Just being careful here not to get this now onto the cloak, and as you can see this separates the brown from the grey just the same as we did on the Warg, so it's just giving us that real nice separation of the browns and the greys together. So once that's done then, I'm also going to use a small amount of silver grey. Silver grey is a really nice sort of off-white colour, so if you don't have silver grey, you can always just use an off-white tone if you want. And that's all I'm doing with this. I mean, if you wanted to, you could just use the bone white again. That would work just as well. And that's all I'm going to do. As you can see, I'm just going to try using the very tip of the brush to pick out some of the details on those white parts that were sticking out before. They're almost like teeth or something like that, or bones or something that are sticking out. So we're painting these using this white, this off-white, this creamy sort of colour, just so that it stands off the model and breaks it all up. And so then we're going to move on and use the Dark Rust 302 and the Orange Brown. We're going to use half and half. So once again, same as we have done previously, we're just going to use a mixture of one blob of each. And this is going to create the perfect start in highlight. And using the very tip of the brush, as you can see, we're just going to start to pick out all of those details. We're going to leave the darker areas just in with all of the muscle tone and texture and things like that across the arms. We're also going to do the same thing just around the face. So we're going to pick out all of those details around the face, but leaving the shade and leaving the wash just sitting in all of those darker areas around the eyes, the scar down the side of his face and in his ears and things like that. So this is going to create and build up that character through highlighting, and we're going to build up the muscle tone and texture and definition all through the highlights and all through the colors with the way that we paint, just like so. So this is going to be a nice, quick and easy way of building that skin color, and we're going to go down this route of this nice orange brown sort of tone for Sharku as well. So yeah, I was torn with different colors and different ways of painting the skin, and I know some of the orcs and some of the specific characters do have a little bit of a pinky skin or a little bit of a brown sort of tone and things like that. So for this one I went with a little bit of a sort of orangey brown to kind of make him look a little bit more dirty and grimy and things like that, partly because he always, whenever you look at like photos or videos of him on the show in the movie, he always looks really sort of dark and dingy and grimy, and he almost looks like he's covered in mud and things like that. He's quite a dark character, so I didn't want him to be too bright. I didn't want him to have like vibrant pink skin or anything like that. I wanted to try to make him look quite rough and ready. So once we've done the first highlight, then we're going to use the orange brown on its own, and just using this now, just going to start to pick out some of those detailed areas again around the nose, the cheekbones, around the chin, like we do when we paint faces normally. And we're also going to do this just around the muscle tone and muscle definition, just around the arms and things like that as well. And this is giving us and creating a really nice sort of level of character through vibrance, through highlighting. And again, we're going to use those very small stippling effects and very small sort of techniques and textures, little small brush strokes, as you can see, creating that illusion of depth within the muscle. And once that bit is dry, then we are just going to use a mixture of the orange brown and a bronze flesh tone. And this is going to give us a really nice vibrant boost to the skin. So we're going to use this on the very extreme edges. So just across the nose, the eyebrows, the cheekbones. And then of course we're going to build up that muscle tone, that muscle texture. And we're going to build up the highlighting across the muscles just in the same way. So again, you can see I'm just trying to use the very, very, very tip, the very edge of this fine sort of size 0 brush. And there we go, you can see just using those little brush strokes to just build the illusion of muscle texture and tone going through the arm, just like so. So this is a cool way of just building that lighter sort of highlight to the skin, and also giving yourself and giving the model a really cool little texture and a really cool little sort of build to the way that the light catches on the skin, and as I say, building the muscle tones and things like that. So the only thing that you've got left to do is just a little bit of a dry brush of silver just across the weapon, or you can go as extreme as you want with any of the rust. And all in all, that should be your model complete. So this is our Sharku riding on the Warg, and all in all I think this looks really great. I love the style of the Warg, and I love how it's all come out. You have to let me know in the comments below what you think of this overall paint job. Thank you so much for your patience and waiting for the new video to come out. Sorry it's taken me so long, and also sorry about the change around of all of the different techniques of the camera work and things like that. I'm still working on these things, so please let me know in the comments below if there's anything that you want me to work on, if there's anything that I need to change. But as always, thank you so much for all of your patience, your support, and your continued amazing comments and amazing views. I really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so, so much. So until next time, my friends, I will see you hopefully very, very soon. And there we go, all done. Take care, my friends. See you soon.